Welcome to Conversations. I'm Suresh Kochatan. Yesterday I watched the movie Kesari Chapter 2, the Jallianwala Massacre. I knew what the movie was all about because we had seen the trailer and read about it, about S Shankaran Nair. His two books, actually one book by him, one was his autobiography, another one was Gandhi and Anarchy. And the third book, which led to the making of this movie, The Case That Shook the British Empire, written by his grandchildren, the Pallards. More importantly, I don't want to review the movie. The movie was very well done. I felt that it could have had a bit more about S Shankaran Nair, especially his formative years in Palakkad, in Kerala, where he was born, and to Madras, where he studied, how he became a vakil, how he learned the ropes of law, and from there how he moved on to the Viceroy's Council and became the man he was, a legend. In fact, that is something that always shakes me up because in our movies, we often don't try to tell the story which the audience may not really like. But then that should have been something that should have been done. But for the benefit of our viewers, I'd like to say this very clearly, that S Shankaran Nair was a man or a legend who I did not know, honestly. Even though I also hail from Kerala, 1 hour away from where his mortal remains are today as a samadhi, I did not know that he existed. In fact, many of us Indians, most of us Indians would not have known that. Why? Because our history is written either by the British or by the Romila Thapas or the Irfan Habibs. They don't want us to know the truth. They don't want us to know about Rania Bakka. They don't want us to know about the Ahom kings and the other queens and kings of India who fought battles and won. We were projected as a nation of losers, and that's exactly what the Britishers wanted. But let's cut to this story. Why is it that Sir S Shankaran Nair does not figure even in the Congress's hierarchy of things? Remember, he was born in a small village, Mankara, in what was then the Malabar area. Now it's called, of course, the Palakkad district. And he was a brilliant young man, but till the age of 5, he could not speak. And I was reading his autobiography, which, by the way, is not available in print, but managed to source it as a PDF file. And it's brilliantly written, and I've not gone through it in total. Maybe it'll take me another couple of days more because it's 550 pages. But from the first 50 odd pages that I read, his life was remarkable. Here was a young boy, remember, in a village, in the back of the Beyond place, becoming one of the legends of Indian history, Indian freedom struggle, but of course never got a credit for it because who got our freedom? Gandhi and Nehru. That's everywhere. No Sardar Patel, no Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose, nobody else. It's only the Gandhi and the Nehrus who got us. Well, from there, Sir S Shankaran Nair's father was a Tahsildar under the British, and he had a transferable job. So he was transferred from the place where he was born, that is where Shankaran Nair was born, to Kannur today, and then to Calicut, and so the family moved along with them. And Shankaran Nair was educated in different places. But after he finished his basic education, which again had a problem because he could not speak till the age of 5. The parents were worried because they thought he was dumb, he could not speak, he was kind of, going to spend the rest of his life like that. So they prayed to Lord Murugan at, the temple in Palani, and there, behold, he could speak after the age of 5, but still had a problem with the word R. I believe he was written his autobiography that he still couldn't pronounce the word R. Nevertheless, a brilliant gentleman, young boy who studied Sanskrit in school, was a champion in everything, from sports to academics. And of course, he was not meant to be in that place. He moved to Madras to study at the prestigious university there. We all know that particular one. That how he studied at the Presidency College in Madras, then Madras, now Chennai. He did his BA and law, BL, and of course enrolled as a vakil. And those days, the entire thing was under the British. The British were running the entire show. They had all the paraphernalia under them, but he enrolled as under one Sir Shepherd, a judge at the Madras High Court. Was his assistant, was like technically an assistant to him, the apprentice to him, learned all the ropes because he was very smart. I believe in his autobiography is written that the clients used to come and speak to him, and he used to give them some legal points, and they used to pay him some money, even though he was only an apprentice. But he said that was helpful for his staying and other facilities in Madras. He used to be able to pay money with that, and of course also the registration process of becoming a vakil. It cost a lot of money those days. So this money was helpful. So you can make out that he was a brilliant man from a young age. But all this is not there in the movie. And this is what my grouse was. Maybe there should have been some fleeting reference to this. The movie is all about the first half being the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, most of it. And then, of course, the trial that happens. And there again, there's a lot of skew because the trial actually happened in London. And it was not against General Dyer, but against Michael O'Dwyer, who was the Lieutenant Governor of Punjab. So it's Dwyer versus Nair. That was the case, and that too was fought in London, not in India. So maybe the cinematic liberty which Akshay Kumar took, that he felt that it is good to have the case being tried in India and everybody speaking Hindi, and of course General Dyer being the target, it will help to get more audiences into the theatre. But looking at Colonel, we all know what really happened at Jallianwala Bagh with General Dyer mercilessly shooting down people who had gathered on the Baisakhi Day on April 13th, 1919. Now, before that, let us get into how Nair rose up through the ranks. After finishing his studies, of course, as I told you, he enrolled as a vakil, and that was in around 1880. In 1885, 5 years later, he became the president of the Indian National Congress. Alfred Hume formed the party when in 1885, the Congress Party was formed. In 1897, Dr. S Shankaran Nair became the president of the Indian National Congress. So that, ladies and gentlemen, was an iconic moment for him. So I stand corrected. It is 1897 when Sir Sankaran Nair became the president of the Indian National Congress. Now, that time there was no Gandhi, there was no Nehru. Of course, they were all hanging around. But then he was pitchforked into it. This, I think, was an Amravati conference that was held at the Indian National Congress, the All India Congress Committee. But he had his difference of opinion with the Congress leaders because he was a very methodical man. And if you read his autobiography, you'll understand. Very methodical. To the core, like he was almost like a scientist. Step by step by step. He felt that India should first try and get as many things in its favor, staying within the British system, judicially, educationally, and otherwise. And then, of course, demand the dominion status, and then, of course, become independent. Remember, from 1947, August 15, 1947, till 26 January 1950, we were a dominion. We were not an independent country. We were under the British crown. But we are all told that we got independence on 15th of August 1947. No, sorry. We were a dominion state. Doesn't matter, but we still had our freedom. We still had our prime minister and everything else. The problem was that Shankaran Nair didn't get along with the Congress leadership. The basic difference of opinion, as I told you, was that let us go this way, which is basically a legal way to fight and get our independence. But Gandhi felt non-violence was a way to do it, and Shankaran Nair disagreed with it. In fact, the title of the book which he wrote, Gandhi and Anarchy, one might get a feeling that, Gandhi was anarchy. But yes, he seriously disagreed with the thought process. Because of that, he got ejected from the Congress system. Today also, even if you go to the Kerala Pradesh Congress Committee office, recently somebody, I believe, after the movie trailer came out, went and put up a photo of his below Sonia Gandhi. But remember how he grew up in the ranks. From that day, when he quit Congress party and he got into the history of the Madras High Court, where he was there from 1904 to 1916, he was a part of the Madras High Court. And then from 1916 to 1920, he was a member of the Viceroy's Council. Now, this is the biggest thing that could happen to an Indian. It was almost like being a part of the Modi's cabinet, Narendra Modi cabinet. They were running India, the Viceroy's Council. And of that, he had 36 departments at one time with him, including the most important, education. He made a lot of reforms in it. In fact, those details are there in his autobiography. I don't want to go through the entire Dobby list of things, but he did some brilliant work, including, for example, bringing foreign universities into India. I'm talking of 1916. Foreign universities to India in those days, that was the thought process of this gentleman, this legend called Sir S Shankaran Nair. He was knighted by the British. I mean, that's the best. They knew that he had a kind of a volcano of a talent with him. That is the kind of person he was. And of course, as we know, 1920, he quit the Viceroy's Council. Now, let me take back you into timeline. On April 13th, 1919, the Jallianwala Bagh massacre took place. Nobody knew outside Amritsar what really happened. And even within Amritsar, nobody had an idea because General Dyer had closed the gates and did not allow anybody to even pick up the dead bodies. That's how bad it was. But General Dyer had a kind of a very uncanny way of making mistakes. And he did a couple of them, which are later picked up in the story in the movie also. But Sir Shankaran Nair knew something was going wrong. Something had gone wrong. Officially, 300 people were killed. That is what the British count was. Later revised to 600, and now maybe even the 1600 to 2000 would have been killed. But then, no information. He wanted information. So what did Sir Shankaran Nair do? He sent a few friends of his to go and look at what happened there. Before that, as soon as he announced the decision that he would quit following the Jallianwala Bagh massacre, leak coming out, some leak somewhere, Motilal Nehru and Annie Besant ran to him and said, please don't quit the Viceroy's Council, because he was the only Indian. In fact, before Sir Shankaran Nair, there were 2 Indians who were part of the Viceroy's Council. But presently, at that point in time, he was the only Indian in it. They did not want him to leave. But then he told Motilal Nehru that, look, I need information on what happened in Jallianwala Bagh. They said, okay, we will get it for you. He had his own sources. So Shankaran Nair sent one of his friends, who was Jesus' father, to go and look at what really happened. He could not reach Amritsar, but he found out the details and he told him what happened. An angry Sir Shankaran Nair quit the Viceroy's Council. Imagine, he was at the height of his career. He could have stayed there. Nobody would have faulted him for it. But then he felt that he owed to those people, those innocent lives that were lost, that were cut down mercilessly by General Dyer, and he needed justice for them. And that is what you see in the movie, where that part suddenly flashes on Akshay Kumar and the courtroom drama with R. Madhavan, his opponent, lawyer, all that happening. But while that is still going on, and there again said there's a lot of cinematic freedoms taken, not in London, it happened in India, and it was not General Dyer against Shankaran Nair, but it was Shankaran Nair versus Michael O'Dwyer, which was the original case. Then, of course, he kind of decided that he would fight, and he fought. But in between that, he came back, and then he knew that he couldn't do much about it, because the British had clamped down every bit of information. There was so much of censorship. But one thing they did, moment Shankaran Nair resigned, the martial law was lifted in Punjab, and all the restrictions on censorship were lifted, because they knew that this gentleman could do something more. He could do more harm. So let's at least give him this. In fact, if you look at the Constitution and if you look at the Reformed Constitution of India, he had a lot of role in it. Not the Ambedkar wala, not what we saw, what Dr. Ambedkar and others did when Constituent Assembly debated and all that. Dr. B.R. Ambedkar's Constitution was different, but he had something before that. But then something happened. He wrote a book, which I told you earlier, Gandhi and Anarchy. And one of the chapters in the book, he criticized Michael O'Dwyer, who was the Lieutenant Governor of Punjab. General Dyer, D-Y-E-R, was the commander who gave the operation and who led the operation and killed the people. So 2 different people. Okay, let's get that straight. So what did he do? He said he was in control, he should have taken care of it. He was a boss, and he is responsible for the massacre. Of course, the British didn't like it one bit, because you're challenging the crown now. You're holding the British accountable. So Michael Dyer decided to file a case of libel against. So the libel case came up in London, and sure enough, it was a classic case where Sir Shankaran Nair used all his legal capabilities to expose the British. He knew that he was going to lose a case, because the entire thing was stacked up against him. The jury was against him, they were all British. The judge was speaking openly in support of Michael O'Dwyer. So there's no way he could win the case. The media was against him, everything. And it was happening in London. But he didn't give up. He fought. He knew he'd lose. He lost, but He paid the fine. He didn't apologize. He said, I will not apologize. I will pay the fine and the cost. But he said at the end of it, I've exposed the empire in front of the entire world because the media was watching. And what would have been relegated to the sidelines on the footnotes of history in India was suddenly all out there. And we all know after that Hunter Commission and everything that happened, General Nair died a horrible death. Michael Dwyer was shot dead by Udham Singh. All this happened. Ladies and gentlemen, a number of channels invited me for talks here in Hyderabad, most of them Telugu. And they asked me this one single question at the end of it. Why is that people like S Shankaran Nair not there in our history books? Well, the Irfan Habibs and the Romila Thapas and the Congress party made sure that only their favorites featured in it. Okay. To a large extent, Sardar Patel was not there. To a large extent, Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose. These are all in paragraphs. Ambedkar was brought in later. Dr. Ambedkar was brought in later. But even he was defeated twice by the Congress party in the Lok Sabha elections. And we all know that Nehru campaigned against Dr. Ambedkar because he didn't want Ambedkar to become taller than him. The Congress party's culture was that it was a dynasty. We thought the Mughals had dynasty, but the Congress also had dynasty. And they made sure that nobody outside their dynasty could claim credit for independence. So it was Nehru and Gandhi who got us independence. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to ask you, what wrong did S Shankaran Nair do? He could have stayed on in the Viceroy's Council. He gave it all up, a cushy life, and he said, I will fight for the victims of the Jallianwala Bagh massacre. And if you today go to the museum in Jallianwala Bagh, apart from all the pictures of the martyrs, you will find a plaque with Sir S Shankaran Nair's name on it. A man from a small village in Kerala being featured right there at Amritsar in Punjab. Talk of national integration, that is what you have it. A piece of history that was hidden under the carpet has come out into the open. Maybe there are more people. Maybe there are more freedom fighters. We had Alluri Sitaramaraju here in the Telugu-speaking states. Except for a movie or a reference here and there, he's nowhere. Komaram Bhim, a tribal chief who fought. But then they are all relegated to the footnotes of history. Because at the end of the day, the Nehrus and the Gandhis got us freedom. And I challenge it because I feel that when I read his autobiography that we could have got our independence somewhere in the 1920, 21, 22. That is what the strategy was of Dr. S Shankaran Nair. He ensured, he was going step by step in kind of cutting down the British influence everywhere. And getting the dominion status was the first big victory for him. Would have been the victory, but it never happened. Because Gandhi had his own ideas. He wanted satyagraha, he wanted non-violence. Subhash Chandra Bose, on the other hand, had his Indian National Army and was going all out of the British. So there were different things pulling in different places. He died, we know, in 1937. And his last wish was that he be buried in his village, Ankara in Palakkad, where there is a samadhi there. It is today overgrown. Recently I saw a news channel in Kerala which had covered it with grass all around. Nobody knows. Whereas we have the Rajghats and we have the other samadhis in Delhi, which have got hundreds of acres of land. But here is a man who really fought the British, who really shook up the British Empire, and lies relegated in his village, with nobody even knowing that he actually was buried there. That's a tragedy, ladies and gentlemen. Kesari Chapter 2 is fine as a movie. There's no dispute about it. At least Akshay Kumar has brought out that there has existed somebody like this. Otherwise, we would not have known. The case that shook up the British Empire was the project that really took up this movie. But beyond that, we also owe it. We also should demand that people, legends like Dr. S Shankaran or Sir S Shankaran Nair, should be featured in our history books. Let the BJP government do it in the NCERT textbooks and bring in the other heroes also. The Home Kings, Rani Abbakka, and many others. Let's do it. Jai Hind.